now I'm just cold as that.
Welcome back, guys, to Failtankadin's guide to pally tanking. In this video, I wanted to go over the spec a little bit more because it seemed a few people had some questions as far as what points to take. Also, you might have noticed my spec has changed slightly since the last video I did, and I wanted to go over the reasons why I changed my spec and what you might want to change just for preferences. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead and destroyed all my settings for Scadia just so I can show you some of the things I want to point out in this video. One thing I want to point out is an important difference between taking eye for an eye versus judgment. If you are all about the DPS, you want to irk every little bit of DPS you can out of your spec, go ahead and take eye for an eye, and I'll explain why in a second. But if you have problems with ads running away or picking up ads, especially for some of the raid bosses when you have to tank 9 ads, and instead of them coming right to you they go for the healers, so now you're having to use your Avenger shield and every other thing you have to try and get those ads off. Improved judgment is really going to help in that situation. That extra little bit of range is going to allow you to get to your raid members without having to drag every other ad to get close to them, just so you can hit them to bring them back after you taunt. Remember, you should always hit them after you taunt, because when you taunt, it only puts you 1 point, I believe it is, above the actual person you're taunting off of. So in that situation, that's when you want to take improved judgment if you have problems with ads. However, if you don't really have problems with picking up ads, for me it's not a big issue, then you want to take for eye for an eye. But just so you know what you're really getting with eye for an eye, I want to go ahead and show you Heroic, or ZA, that I recently did. And I want to take a look at one of the bosses, who is actually a caster. It's the cat lady with all the crazy cats, the groups you gotta pull, in case you didn't know that. We're going to go ahead and look at the damage. Now, she is continually casting, I believe it's a Shadow Bolt on your tank. Not only that, but she does Tears of Blood, which is AoE damage, and she does this huge Nova, or this huge wave that goes out and hits everyone. So there's a fairly good amount of magic damage going on. Now if we take a look at Failtankadin here, and we can see all the damage that Failtankadin has done. However, you're going to notice eye for an eye here is at almost the very bottom, and it's only sitting at 0.9%. I actually only did 14.5k damage during the whole period of that fight with eye for an eye. So just so you can see, eye for an eye is really not doing that much damage back. However, if you want to get that extra little teeny bit of damage, then go ahead and take eye for an eye. Just to show you that it's not just that particular boss, let's go ahead and look at a trash mob here. We're going to go ahead and look at damage, Failtankadin. And then we're going to see here, eye for an eye is once again at the bottom of the charts, and we're only looking at about 1%. So you can see you're really not getting the DPS you think you would get with eye for an eye. So that being said, you can get a feel for whether you want to take eye for an eye over judgment. That's going to be a personal preference. I personally, if you're having problems with picking up ads, definitely take judgment. If you're not having problems with ad control, go with eye for an eye. Okay, one of the other things you're going to notice is I do have 2 points into Guarded by the Light, and I took them out of Hallowed Ground and 1 point out of Pursuit of Justice to go ahead and get Guarded by the Light. This is only worth it for 4.1. Unless they do something dramatic to Guarded by the Light, it's not going to be worth to do it in 4.2. The only reason why I put 2 points into Guarded by the Light is if you put 1 point into it, it allows you to proc your Holy Shield every time you cast Word of Glory. This is really nice so that you don't have to try and work a Word of Glory in between your Shield of the Righteous. You can go ahead and get your Shield of the Righteous up even if you proc your Word of Glory. So why even do this in the first place? Like you told us, oh hey, don't put any points in there. You know, it could be spent elsewhere. That's an excellent point. unless you are doing raid bosses with single target bosses, you really don't want to take guarded by the light. When you're in an instance, you're going to be continually working with your threat, making sure DPS isn't pulling off of you, especially if they're, not focusing your target. That really shouldn't be an issue, but you're not going to be able to, by the time you're able to use guarded by the light or your word of glory, the mobs are already going to be dead. A few Shield of the Righteouses or Inquisitions, and the mobs are going to be gone. You're really not going to have a chance to work up to the point where you can get that guarded by the light off. So you are better off putting it into a point into Hallowed Ground and an extra point into Pursuit of Justice. The reason why I took it out, another thing I thought about is Consecration is the least priority on my list. If you look at the list, Consecration is your very last spell. Very rarely do I ever actually cast Consecration. I never really get to that point where I'm on the total cooldown and I don't have anything to cast that I go for Consecration. It does happen once in a blue moon. So I chose to take that point out of Hallowed Ground, and I'll go ahead and leave Consecration out of my rotation. Or I could still use it and have the chance that it might drain mana. It doesn't completely remove it off the table. However, you have to be a little more wise about using it mana-wise. So the point of Pursuit of Justice was to give us that 15% increased run speed. It's going to help you kite a lot of the ads, which is really good, especially for positioning. I felt it was worthy to take 1 point out and only get the 8% speed. Even though it's not as good as a 15, I think the Word of Glory is a little more beneficial right now as far as raid tanking. So you guys got to remember, it depends on your situation, what you're actually doing. If you're raid tanking, this setup might work a little bit better for you. If you're going ahead and doing a lot of instances, you're still working on your gear, you're going to want to go ahead and put the point into Hallowed Ground and the point into Pursuit of Justice. Alright, so I want to talk about Judgment of the Pure real quick. You're probably, something I was surprised to find out, and something you're probably seeing on the screen here, is that your auto attack tends to be second or third on your spell list as far as damage done. So you're going to look at that and go, hey, it kind of makes sense to take Judgment of the Pure, because I'm going to get a 9% haste. That's going to increase my auto attack, which is like my second biggest spell. Here's why I suggest to not do that, and here's why that assumption really isn't that accurate. So how it breaks down is, since our Judgment of the Pure only affects our attack and none of any of our other spells, we're going to see a change of 9% to our attack speed. We're going to actually see our damage increase by 9%. So if we do 17.3% already with attack, we're going to multiply that by 9% or add an additional 9% to it to see what we'd actually get. So if we multiply 17.3 times 109% or 1.09 on the calculator there, you're going to end up getting 18.85% damage. That's a difference of 1.55 or 1.6 to be optimistic increase the damage. That's really not a whole lot for 3 points into Judgment. Now if you do your basic cookie cutter spec without sacrificing your Rule of Law, which as you can see here, our Hammer of Wrath and our Crusader Strike is always the #1 DPS that we're doing, so you never want to give those 3 points up. You actually only have 2 points to spend somewhere. That means that realistically you can only get Judgment of the Pure up to 6%, which is actually reducing her 1.5 or 1.6% down even further to about probably 1%. That being said, you could use those other 2 points to give you something like Pursuit of Justice, which is going to help you avoid getting hit. You can do like I did, put it into Guarded by the Light to go ahead and give you the bonus to your Holy Shield. You can use those points more effectively for your actual tanking style than increasing your damage by about 1%. So that's why I decided do not go with Judgment of the Pure unless you absolutely have your heart set on it. You want that 1% of damage, go ahead and put it into it, but I think you could really spend it elsewhere. So now that you have a better understanding of what you're actually getting out of each one of those talent points, the extra ones that we can choose as a tank, This here is your basic cookie talent spec, with the exception of you can move it from hollow to ground. You can actually move that point into guarded by the light, like this one here. And that's basically your cookie cutter tanking spec, which gives you 2 points left over to put into whatever you choose. Those 2 points really aren't gonna be extremely beneficial one way or the other, but they're gonna help your style of tanking. Whether you want to get that extra like 1% increase the damage, whether you want to be able to move faster if you're kiting a lot, whether you want to be able to heal yourself a little bit and maybe get that bubble with that extra point into Word of Glory, that's up to you. You can move those 2 points around, but really it has to do more of your play style than it is anything else. You're not really going to get a huge benefit from any of those abilities. Anyways, guys, I hope this cleared up some of the questions you guys had about the different talents and what you should pick for the last 2 points. Like I said, it's really just based on your tanking style. If you tank a lot of raids, you might want to go with Guarded by the Light. If you do a lot of heroic tanking, you might want to do a something like Pursuit of Justice, or maybe Judgment of the Pure if you really, really want that 1% DPS. However, you know, that's up to you guys. You have a little bit of freedom to move with the spec as long as you basically stick with the basic cookie cutter spec. Once again, guys, this is Failtankadin. I hope this helped you guys out. If you guys have any questions, remember, just leave a comment on the YouTube here and I'll get back to you as soon as I hear from you, or even shoot me an email. Alright guys, this is Failtankadin, and I'm out.